The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Mark Andrews sent a scathing message to those who think he is slowing down.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
I am very excited for this game. I have been really since the schedule came out.
Yes.
The Ravens, they love playing in prime time. And I think for both these teams, there are a lot of things you can probably tell about them once the clock hit zero in this game. A lot of things these teams are probably trying to figure out about themselves as well after the first 2 weeks of the season.
Oh, no question about it. And these are two heavyweights, and this is an awesome matchup. These two teams don't play against each other a lot. And to get on this Monday Night Football stage, Kevin, is very exciting. Two offenses that can really go. And you got to figure for our FanDuel friends out there that a lot of overs will be out there for this Lions-Ravens team. I expect a high-scoring game.
I think it will be. I'm right there with you. And I know, Matt, in Detroit, it's been a tale of two teams in the first couple weeks of the season. Obviously, the loss of the Packers in week 1, followed by a thumping of the Bears in week number 2. What's the biggest storyline in Detroit right now as we get ready for this game on Monday night?
I think the biggest storyline is that the Lions are back. I mean, after week 1 and how embarrassing that certainly was in Green Bay and how poorly they played, the opportunity to on a pretty big stage against their former offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson to really wallop the Chicago Bears and do it in an impressive fashion to the point, and you and I talked about this before we hit record, running up the score basically on them late. Now everybody feels good again. The good feeling is back. The good vibe is back. Jared Goff, NFC Offensive Player of the Week, 5 touchdowns. And, you know, the weapons that are all – Isaac Tesla's made 2 plays. He has 2 catches on the year. That's it. He's the 4th receiver. But they've both been outstanding plays, one-handed catches. So the good vibes are back. The defense was good. And now the true test certainly comes against a high-level AFC team and having to try to stop Lamar Jackson. So should be interesting. How about in Baltimore? Obviously, the gag job in week 1, but I'm sure a good feeling after this past Sunday against the minor league Browns, right?
Yeah, would have been a lot harder to move past it if they weren't able to get the job done. And it was crazy, Matt, because the offense didn't necessarily play up to the level that they really are supposed to, particularly in the run game. Derrick Henry was held to just about 2 yards a carry. The Browns did a great job of stopping him, and the Ravens, you look up and they have 41 points. Lamar Jackson has 4 touchdowns, and you're like, oh, this doesn't even feel like they're really playing that well, and they still have 41 points. So they have scored 40 points in back-to-back games here to start the season, and that's a good sign as any. I do think, though, that some of the offense has had a bit of a slow start, which I think makes the start to their season even more incredible. Mark Andrews only has 2 catches on the year. He kind of talked about his slow start a little bit, saying that he doesn't really believe he's off to one because of the fact that he's been impactful as a blocker, springing Derrick Henry on some plays. And, you know, he says he's still an elite tight end. And I believe that too. I know it's not the popular opinion in Baltimore right now, but the Ravens possibly, it's not, we're going to have to wait till Monday night. They could be getting Isaiah Likely back from his broken foot in this game. We'll have to see how that unfolds over the course of the week. Then on the offensive line, I think is the other big story. They really struggle with that Browns defensive front at times. And, you know, Myles Garrett right now is arguably the best defensive player in the world. So that's something you have to kind of figure out. But, you know, in my opinion, you have guys like Roger Rosengarten, Daniel Falele, Andrew Voorhees. Ronnie Stanley struggled in this game against Cleveland as well. I think that, and we'll get to matchups a little bit later in the show, but that offensive line for Baltimore, I think the storyline is, you know, Lamar Jackson is the ultimate. He can make something out of nothing. If there's a quick win by a defender, it's not just a defender getting past your offensive lineman. It's also about getting Lamar Jackson down. So he can work with it, but, you know, you still want to have him feel comfortable in that pocket to just sit back there and sling it. Getting Likely back would be huge. Kyle Van Noy, obviously a Detroit Lions former player. He is expected to miss a couple of weeks. So obviously probably won't play in this game. Marlon Humphrey got picked up a groin injury, so not clear what his status is going to be. Injuries are always a storyline, Matt. How's Detroit's injury situation looking?
Injury situation is all right. I mean, I think the Lions feel pretty good about where they are. The biggest question mark is Marcus Davenport, but he's always hurt. I made the point on my show I kind of refer to him as Marcus Davenhurt because he just is never out there. When he had a sack in week 2 and finally got one, and it was nice to see. And there's so much talent and potential there, but he's just always injured. Brian Branch had a leg injury that turned out to just be a cramp, and that's it. So that's important. Taylor Decker had a shoulder last week, kept him out of practice. He played a fantastic game against the Bears, but knock on wood, the Lions, feel like they are pretty healthy. You mentioned Van Noy, and I brought this up on my show the other day. Mike Green going to get more snaps? That's a guy that the Lions passed on not once but twice in the draft this year, that a lot of people mocked him to Detroit. I know there were the off-field issues. Will he be getting more run if KVN is out?
That appears to be the plan. That's what I think is going to happen here. And look, Mike Green is a player that, you mentioned the Ravens felt comfortable enough taking him in the second round with everything that was surrounding him during the draft process and everything that happened off the field. And on the field, look, the production in college was clear. He was doing it against smaller schools, doing it against, you turn on that Ohio State tape, he was putting people in spin cycles on that field. But I think for him, it's just about getting better each and every single week. This will be his third game and kind of thrust into a big role. He certainly has the talent to be an every down player. He can provide some of that. He almost got a sack on Joe Flacco in week number 2. Would have been his first in his career. Would have been kind of poetic considering Joe's history with the Ravens. But I think that Mike Green's going to be the biggest beneficiary of the playing time that is up for grabs, assuming Van Noy does have to miss this game, which again, all reports are indicating that he will. So other than that, there's not necessarily another guy. David Ojabo would be the other one who was a second round pick out of Michigan a couple of years ago, but he suffered an injury during his pro day and really never has put anything on the tape for Baltimore to give him a consistent role. So it's going to be Odafe Oweh, Tavius Robinson, and Mike Green in this one from the pass rushing department. But speaking of pass rushers, Matt, Aiden Hutchinson obviously suffered the injury last season. It was a brutal one. He's back now. How has he looked in his first couple games, first couple snaps back? Is this the player that, we remember, or is there still a bit of a ramp up that's happening right now?
Well, that's another story for this game, is that Aiden Hutchinson, it looked to me like in week 1 at Green Bay, he was just kind of feeling things out. He was getting his sea legs under him, no pun intended, because he came back from a broken leg. He had a ton of pressures against the Bears, and it felt like middle of the second quarter on, it was the Aiden Hutchinson of old being able to get in there. And now having to chase down Lamar Jackson, having to try to corral the most elusive quarterback in the league and do that is a huge story for this game, because I think Aiden Hutchinson's confidence now is back. And I think that he just looks like himself, just looks like a guy that we all expected to, hit stardom again after last year's injury. So being able to somehow, run, I think, and we'll talk about this coming up in the matchup segment, but a guy like Brian Branch is going to be important too against Lamar. But the Lions in week 1 were nowhere near Jordan Love, nowhere near him. And I know the Packers offensive line is much better than the, remade Bears offensive line, which is really like reshuffling deck chairs on the Titanic in Chicago. Their O-line sucks every year. But all in all, I think that front for the Lions, pressuring and might not be in sacks. They had 4 sacks last week on Caleb, but if they can just pressure and bother Lamar Jackson, they've got confidence now they didn't have a week ago.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
There is a chance that Brock Purdy will play against the Cardinals in week 3.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
with the news of Brock Purdy doing a little limited practice, and Kyle Shanahan says there's a chance that he might still be able to play in week 3. And with some bad injury news for the Arizona Cardinals, that line is actually moved to 2.5 points now. So what's going on over there in Arizona with these Cards?
Not even close to as bad as it could have been, Brian Peacock. Like, here's the thing. The Arizona Cardinals won week 1 by the skin of their teeth, avoiding catastrophe, even though it shouldn't have happened. And that was only expounded upon in week 2, where absolute calamity almost happened, where the Carolina Panthers almost came back to beat the Cardinals at home. But the problem was the Cardinals lost 3 of their top corners after losing 2 of them before the season started. Garrett Williams, Max Melton, and rookie Will Johnson all went down what looked to all be pretty serious injuries. And news came out today. Jonathan Gannon met with the media. Garrett Williams is now on IR, but he has a chance to return. I thought that was an ACL. I'm not a doctor. I thought it was an ACL. He went down right away. Max Melton looked bad, missed the game, but he practiced today pretty much in full. And Will Johnson wasn't at practice. He's dealing with a groin, but there is an outside chance he plays on Sunday. And this could have been catastrophic for the Cardinals if all 3 guys missed as much time as it looked like they could have missed after Sunday.
Which injury has the biggest impact this week when you look at how the 49ers match up with those Arizona Cardinals? Is there one injury that you're like, man, this is one we could have really – this is a guy we really could have used this week?
Garrett Williams is not a name that's household. Do you remember when before Fred Warner was a household name? You knew he was really good. I knew he was really good. We've been doing this a long time together. I knew
he was wearing number 48 at one point. He was like, bad
what?
number, but awesome player. Number 48, right. Fred Warner. Yeah, still an all-pro.
So probably a year removed from being introduced into the NFL. That's where Garrett Williams is now. He was the highest Pro Football Focus rated zone corner last year. The dude was a 3rd-round pick just because he tore his ACL in December, his last season at Syracuse. The Cardinals nabbed him. The dude is an absolute stud. So it's always going to be him. Even though he plays in the slot more, the Cardinals have a defensive setup, which we'll talk about in the next segment, where you play 3 safeties and you move Garrett Williams to the outside, and that's where they're most comfortable. So it's going to be Garrett Williams. Max Melton is really leveled up, but Garrett Williams is the best corner the Cardinals have.
I really get the feeling that Kyle Shanahan is trying to make the Arizona Cardinals prepare for 2 quarterbacks. I don't think it's a reality that Brock Purdy is going to play this week, but he was limited at practice, and I saw some video of him, at least taking a drop back, and so he's going to give it a try. And if he can go, he's going to go. He's just one of those guys, and he's going to gut through it. The way that Mac Jones played might allow the 49ers to say, okay, Brock, you're 80%. It's not worth it because of what this turf toe can be. We don't need a Joe Burrow situation and you needing surgery and missing 3 months instead of a couple of weeks. So for that reason, I really don't think that Brock Purdy is going to play, but I do think that Kyle Shanahan likes the fact that he's at practice limited, so he can at least not rule him out yet. And but we'll see. I mean, there's been surprises before with who you thought might be able to play, who won't be able to play. And Kyle Shanahan, when the docs tell Kyle Shanahan, okay, this guy I think can play, and the player says I can play, Kyle Shanahan gives them every single carry you could possibly give them. I mean, he's done it before with running back, he's done it with every player. So like, if you can go, you could go in Kyle Shanahan's locker room. So there is that factor as well with Brock Purdy. I think it's doubtful that he will play. But I think that Kyle Shanahan likes not knowing, because then he can be like, oh, yeah, I don't know. He might be able to play, because I think he likes the Cardinals preparing for both quarterbacks. Offense, not that different, though, so I don't know if it's going to really change what the Cards are spending their hours on this week of practice.
Egomania just morphed into another form is all it is from Kyle Shanahan, which is fine. Listen, Mac Jones, okay, and this isn't like, could Mac Jones have done exactly what Brock Purdy did if they drafted Mac Jones? That's not what I'm going to ask you. Mac Jones looked more than competent last week. Okay, when you have really good skill position players, even with Kittle out, when you've got Trent Williams, when you've got at least an average to slightly above average offensive line and Christian McCaffrey, is Mac Jones talented enough to be, if say Brock Purdy was 85%, are you still starting Mac Jones to kind of one more week to see? Like, is this a wait and see kind of thing?
I think waiting for Brock Purdy to be 100% is more about Brock Purdy not missing more time than it is about you need him in there at 85% over Mac Jones. I think is the best way to put it. I think, 85% Brock Purdy would be fine, and I would probably start him there. If you think that there's no possible way that he could injure himself further and really hurt that turf toe injury, which can be a long-term injury. And initially it was, 2 to 5 weeks, and it's turned out it might only be 1 week if he actually does end up playing. So less about performance, more about long-term injury, I think, for Brock Purdy there. And Mac Jones did play really well, but again, and the Arizona Cardinals are familiar with last week's opponent for the 49ers, the New Orleans Saints. And both those games against the Saints for these two teams went similar, where the Saints aren't very good, thankfully, because, the 49ers and the Cardinals probably didn't play their best game necessarily, but still got out with wins, because I don't think the Saints are that good. Maybe you've got a different feel from those games against the Saints, but I kind of look at these games and like, okay, these were teams early in the season, kind of not quite ready for, mid-season form yet. And thankfully you're playing against the New Orleans Saints, which is why I'm fascinated to see how this goes in week 3 against the Cardinals now at 2-0.
Yeah, this is going to be the barometer check. Because I think, even though the Cardinals playing the Saints in week 1 was a preseason game. Like, it was a preseason game. Luckily, they skated out with a win. I don't know why people aren't talking about how Spencer Rattler's playing. He torched, in some respects, the 49ers at times on defense, and that's not a knock. He looked very, very clean and very comfortable. So just because it was the Saints doesn't mean it was the worst team we've ever seen in the NFL, which is what they're kind of getting painted as. Now, with the Cardinals in Carolina, that was more the litmus test like you had in New Orleans last week, where it's like that was kind of it. 2 bad teams you're supposed to beat didn't necessarily go as swimmingly as you'd hoped, even though it was week 2 and you were kind of the cobwebs off. For me, because you're right, this is the barometer check. And this is the perfect time to discuss this to my, fears, everydayers and everything. Look at this man next to me, okay? You talk about injuries, they're never healthy and they always win games. Okay, so just because the Cardinals are dealing with some sort of adversity early in the season doesn't mean with good coaching it's not circumventable. And like with George Kittle, he's a double-edged sword. He's elite when he's on the field, and he's not on the field 16 games every year. So it's like you roll with the punches, you deal with what you got to deal with, and you move the hell forward and hope you win more games than you lose. I mean, because the 49ers are never healthy. Ever. All the stars are never healthy.
And the last time they were, 2023 was they were top 5 health that year and went to the Super Bowl, right? And so that's, and they're bottom 5 injury team every other year aside from that, and have still gone to championship games and Super Bowls. So look, and everyone's hurt every week anyway. So you got to throw that out the window. And I know it hurts to have some certain players gone over others, but you got to find a way to win. And the 49ers are a well-coached football team. So that's one of the key matchups for me in this game.
Locked on Bengals, Locked on Vikings, crossing over for what I guess is now a battle of the backups.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
If I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd only have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. So we're getting Jake Browning again in US Bank Stadium. It's like his 2021 preseason all over again, James.
Yeah, look, I don't even know where to start, but I guess we should start with Jake Browning, right?
We have to start with the backup thing that's happening.
Yeah.
This is the headline of the game.
And no doubt about it. And it's like, man, I was so looking forward to the Joe Burrow, Brian Flores chess match. And like when the schedule came, I thought about that. And,
I was so scared of this one I still like Vikings, like because of what happened in the last game, like Vikings fans are like maybe the most scared fan base of Jake Browning specifically. Like he's already hurt us once.
Yeah.
But going into this game, I was like, oh man, Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor, quick strike, like get the ball out kind of quarterback, totally will neutralize the blitz. I thought he was like, the Bengals are perfectly set up to neutralize the Brian Flores blitz. And I was like, man, that one's going to be a tough matchup. And the teeth gets taken out of it a little bit.
It does. And it's a bummer, and it's a bummer for a few reasons. I mean, obviously the biggest story of the week for the Bengals is Joe Burrow going out, and it overshadowed, much to Zach Taylor's. He pretended he was surprised. He's like, it doesn't feel like we're 2-0 because they're 2-0 for the first time since 2018. Zach Taylor got here.
Fast start Bengals.
Right. They get off to this fast start, and everyone all week is like, including me, I'd trade those 2 wins for Joe Burrow. Like, obviously you'd rather have Joe Burrow
for sure.
And then it's so interesting to have the Jake Browning versus Vikings just element of it. And I thought about that during the Jags game is I'm like, man, if Browning, before we knew what Burrow was dealing with, if Burrow was going to come back or not, I'm like, Browning has to start next week. He's going to Minnesota. And so, that is a fun, it's not the headline here in Cincinnati, but I think by the time we get to Sunday, that's going to be a fun storyline for sure.
And he kind of already had his revenge game, right? And he if I recall, he came out and said later, he's like, I probably shouldn't have said, like, you shouldn't have cut me. And he kind of regretted it. He was just a little wrapped up in the moment. Like, it happens, but I wonder if there's a little bulletin board on that for the Vikings defense that, like, I don't know how much you guys paid attention to how that 2023 season ended for the Vikings, but, you know, Kirk Cousins was out. It was Nick Mullins. We were backup against backup again. And that was kind of the day where, like, in that fourth quarter, in those adjustments that Zach Taylor made in that game, the Vikings defense never recovered from that getting put on tape. They got blown out, and then they got blown out again. Like, they did not win another game after that. And so that's why I kind of always looked at this one as like, okay, what does Zach Taylor have for us now? And even with Jake Browning, like, that doesn't change the fact, and it didn't last time, that Zach Taylor kind of had the secret sauce and showed everybody, and then everybody else copycatted, and it took a while for the Vikings defense to figure out a way to, like, play football again. So I wonder if it happens again, but then you got to the other side with Carson Wentz now. We haven't seen anything of Carson Wentz. He signed after the preseason. The Vikings had terrible backup quarterback play in the preseason. They cut everybody but an undrafted rookie out of Minnesota named Max Brosmer and brought in Carson Wentz. So we have no idea what we're going to see. And now we're going to be treated to Carson Wentz for an entire tour of the AFC South here over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. That I have to ask you, starting this way, because I do think Bengals fans wondered in the moment. I certainly did. This version of JJ McCarthy, is Carson Wentz the better option, like, for this week?
I mean, people are going to ask that, but I don't think that that's smart at all. Even if, you know, yeah, sure, maybe a veteran backup style quarterback is going to do better than your struggling rookie. But you guys had this in the early days with Joe Burrow too. Guys have to work through it. So, you know, benching a kid that you drafted 10th overall and basically aligned your entire franchise around and your entire career path around, if you're Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, and then giving up after that, after 6 days, that would be pretty bad. And I would even say fireable. And I think people calling for that probably just they would probably get fired too if they were in this job.
Oh, no doubt. I'm not saying bench him. I just mean it's a way to maybe you could all be like, it's almost scarier, I would say, if you're the Bengals with the unknown with Carson. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you don't have any tape on him. There is that weird thing. Like, this is in no way would the Vikings choose this, right?
Sure.
But yeah, the argument would be that, you know, hey, he's a veteran. He knows how to get in and out of the huddle a little faster. The Vikings have had a ton of problems with this. They're breaking the huddle at 10 seconds, and the play clock is running down on them all the time. D-line is teeing off because you can't do a snap count anymore. They've had all kinds of problems with, like, the timing of stuff, but it's also kind of hard to time out with a quarterback you've never practiced with. So I feel like we're kind of just trading some problems for other problems right now. Sure. The thing is, from the Bengals side of it, that defense doesn't know what those problems actually are or how to exploit them and attack them because they don't have any tape to work off of. So they're going to have to kind of figure that out on the fly for a fairly maligned unit.
Yeah, I think that's what's so intriguing to me is this young Bengals defense that has 4 interceptions in 2 weeks. And you could say, oh, well, Carson Wentz is going to give you chances too. And maybe he will.
Oh, you're getting picks. Oh, 100%.
But you had the film on McCarthy, and outside of that one quarter, one of 8 quarters of football, essentially, where he was awesome, by the way, I watched that. It's like, man, now you have this unknown with Carson Wentz. I don't know. I think it's interesting, but at the same time, it isn't as sexy as Joe Burrow versus JJ McCarthy. And I would love that element of it.
Yeah.
And we don't get that. That doesn't mean it's not going to be interesting though. Like, I think this is going to be a really fun game and an entertaining game, even if it isn't what we thought it would be 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Yeah, there will be fun and weird and wild elements. I think both of these quarterbacks have a propensity to have a disaster play here or there, have some game swinging mistake. But honestly, when it comes down to these battles of the backups, it kind of feels like it comes down to like elsewhere on the roster. I don't know. We'll get into more of those matchups a little later. But I think the goal for both of these teams is to just hide your quarterback. Figure out a way to make it come down to Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. Figure out a way to make it come down to Trey Hendrickson or Jonathan Grenard. Like, make the game about your stars and make it so that we're not walking away from this one being like, hey, do you remember the Carson Wentz disaster game or the Jake Browning disaster game?
I think it's a great point, because that's how the Bengals are so Joe Burrow driven, and that is why they win when they win most of the time with Joe. And now they can't be that way. And in the Vikings, as JJ McCarthy comes along or Carson Wentz, they're going to have to win without being quarterback dominant at times. Well, the Bengals are going to have to, we're going to see if they can do that. And they were able to do it some in 2023 when Jake Browning came in. Obviously, Vikings fans are aware of that. Mm-hmm. But can they do it again? Like, they shouldn't have won the other day. Like the Jags and Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen.
Well, the Jags aren't a real football team. So,
like those guys, like they made so many mistakes to leave the door open for the Bengals. I mean, Jake Browning throws 3 picks and he still gets the ball with the chance to go win. It's wild to think of, but that's what happened. And so, yeah, I agree with you. One, your quarterback can't make those kind of mistakes and have 3 interceptions, even though one wasn't his fault. 2, the other guys around him are going to have to pick him up, whether it's the Vikings or the Bengals.
And that's just how it has to be with a backup quarterback. It's going to have to be this way for both of our teams moving forward here. Although you guys are out. Can I break some news to Bengals fans?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it'll be like the next day when they're listening to this. But as we are recording this, the Bengals officially placed Joe Burrow on injured reserve. Little roster transaction news there for you.
There we go. Oh, man.
We're all very happy here on the Locked On crossover.
The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet in the moment. Player props, same-game parlays, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
I tell you what, these Oklahoma media members giving Auburn no shot.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Is this like a new rivalry that's built up?
I don't know about rivalry, but I'm not sure if y'all have heard this, but Jackson Arnold used to play at Oklahoma. And
what?
Now he's going back to Oklahoma. I don't know if y'all have missed that, but goodness gracious, the storylines around this one are absolutely tremendous, with John Mateer and his incredibly strong start to the season and Heisman buzz, and obviously everything that goes along with Jackson Arnold returning home. This is going to be an awesome one for sure.
Yeah, as much as the coaches want to try to take the emotion out of it, they're all just talking about it's about the name on the front, not the name on the back. I mean, that's not exactly what they're saying, but that's what they're trying to say.
Sure.
And it is. I mean, it really is. It's about Oklahoma versus Auburn. It's about 2 teams that played a really tight ball game last year, 2 teams that think that they're better than what they were a year ago. And yes, Jackson Arnold's a part of that. And so much of how Oklahoma wins this game depends on how well they contain Jackson Arnold in the run game in particular. But it's bigger than that. There's a lot of talent on both sides of the football that go beyond just the quarterbacks.
Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to talk about specific things, but like obviously all the attention is on both of these quarterbacks, Mateer and Arnold. But to me, the most important individual matchup in this game, in my opinion, Auburn's offensive line versus this Oklahoma defensive line that has really shocked the conference. I mean, statistically, they've done a lot of impressive things up front, and we can be specific and say the front 7 if you guys want to. But to me, whoever wins that battle, I think wins this football game.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm seeing and noticing, as well, is that The Auburn runs the ball a lot. So far this season, Auburn is sitting here with 726 rushing yards. Oklahoma's not giving up. They're giving up an average of under 100 yards per game. So that's going to be a massive battle in that. While also Auburn's defense, they're not giving up very many rushing yards as well. Total 201 yards so far this season. Roughly 70 something per game. And Oklahoma is still trying to figure out their running game. So I guess the big question is, how effective do you think, we'll start with you, Zach, how effective do you think Jackson Arnold's going to be in his running game on top of the pass going into this one?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the plan. Auburn hasn't played a team that has tried to stop the run yet. Auburn went out and spent all this money on Jackson Arnold and these elite wide receivers. They've got arguably the best receiver room on paper in the SEC, and we've seen glimpses of it, right? But all of these defenses, despite Auburn having the success that you mentioned on the run there, Jay, it's been the game plan has still been, hey, we don't want these receivers to beat us. I think Oklahoma's approach is going to be different. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on that. But that's what the Hugh Freeze offense does. I mean, you guys run some RPO stuff at Oklahoma too. Like, you take what the defense gives you. And so far, the defense has said, hey, we're going to keep the box light. And Auburn's taken advantage of that. Does that change on Saturday? Do we see more targets to Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton? Malcolm Simmons is expected to return. Horatio Fields has been an incredible surprise. I'm fascinated to see how Oklahoma chooses to attack Auburn when Auburn has the football.
To me, it's going to come down to that, because I think that Oklahoma is not going to get out of what they do best, and that's stop the run. They're going to want to stop the run first and then force Auburn to be in some second and long, third and long situations where it's going to put Jackson Arnold having to drop back and make a throw. That's where they want him to live. If that means adding an extra guy to the box in early downs and letting your guys on the outside be one-on-one with Cam Coleman, with Eric Singleton, they might risk that early in this game just to see how well their cornerbacks are going to hold up. They don't want to get beat in the run game. They don't want this to be a repeat of Oklahoma versus Alabama in 2024 or Vandy versus Alabama, where it's, hey, we're going to run the ball 40 times. We're going to take the air out of the football and keep control of the clock. No, they want this game to be a situation where Jackson's going to have to throw it. If you make him throw it, Oklahoma's going to like their chances in the long run. Will that happen? That's going to be the biggest key, because Auburn's really good up front. They run the ball really effectively. Jackson Arnold's a good running quarterback. The +1 run game is going to be the key. Oklahoma's been good at defending it at times here and there. Michigan didn't really try to utilize Bryce Underwood's legs a whole lot in that game, but when they did, Oklahoma was ready for it, and they dropped him for loss on a number of occasions. So much comes down to, can they prevent Jackson Arnold from beating them with his legs? If they do that, it'll put them in a better position to defend him.
Let me ask you guys this, because statistically, Oklahoma's defensive stats are elite. I don't want to take anything away from Oklahoma. I want to be very clear. I think they're deserving all the hype that they're getting. But with this game against Michigan, I mean, do we know that Michigan is good offensively? Like, do we know that? And then the other two games were against, far inferior opponents, where it's like, does that matter in this game? So I just want to ask y'all's opinion on, sure, you shut down Michigan offensively, but I think Michigan's quarterback is going to be elite. I don't think he's elite, in his second game ever and his first road start. Where are y'all on this?
I think Michigan's offense is good. I think they came into that game understanding that we don't want to put it in Bryce Underwood's hands as often as we need to try to go to win the game if we get behind, because it doesn't set him up for success. His first road start in a hostile environment, that's not going to be a recipe for his development to actually be a positive thing, kind of like what we've seen with Jackson Arnold last year. Not great circumstances to try to develop with him, and the coaching staff didn't try to adjust anything to help support him a little bit. I think they came into that understanding like, hey, we're going to have a hard time. We're going to try and run the ball. We're going to try and do what we can to not put it all on our true freshman quarterback in his second road start. But I do think that Oklahoma's defense reiterated that plan. It's like, maybe they were going to try and throw the ball a little bit, but Oklahoma didn't really allow for them to have much success.
Yeah.
And so they realized, okay, we got to make this a conservative game plan for Bryce.
Yeah, if you look at the average for Michigan outside of Oklahoma in their, cupcake games, they're averaging roughly 40 something points per game. They're also putting up roughly almost 500 yards per game when they're not playing Oklahoma. And I say that because you can do that comparison with other teams as well. Look at the cupcake games, look at how those teams actually perform when they don't play that team, and then how they perform when they play them. And so to me, I think Michigan's going to be a good team long term. The Central Michigan game was very much a cupcake, and it looked like a cupcake. They just dominated them front and center, and I think that's kind of where the difference comes in. At Michigan offensive line, to me, is still good. They ran for 381 yards on Central Michigan. You're supposed to do that. That's one of those that you're supposed to do.
I mean, my thing is, like, who cares, though? Like, who cares what you do, what Michigan does against, Central Michigan? I mean, the talk about Georgia was how they played with their food the first 2 weeks, and then they win one of the most exciting games of the college football season against Tennessee. And I think we all agree that Tennessee has a chance to be a playoff team based on what we've seen so far. So who cares? Who cares about those games,
I think everyone should. And the reason is because the one knock we had on Michigan when it came to playing their food is that their defense did not look like their usual self. It did not look like your usual self against Tennessee. So they did not get better when they played Tennessee. Their offense just stepped up in that game. So that to me is something that's a good indication of what your defense could potentially be, like the peak. To me, if they had found a way to slow down Tennessee like they have done every other year, even with Heupel there, they found ways to slow them down. They could not slow down that Tennessee defense. And so that's why I point out those non-cons, because even when you're playing with your food, if you are still able to achieve the level that the expectation or even the ceiling is close to your ceiling, that's typically an indication of what the season's going to look like.
I mean, I look at this, Zach, and
I don't know if I agree with that.
I look at this and I think Auburn is the best offense that Oklahoma is going to play yet this season. Okay?
Sure.
This is their biggest test. Two of the best wide receivers in college football against a secondary that hasn't really been tested significantly yet. Jackson Arnold's a much more experienced quarterback than Bryce Underwood is at this point in their careers.
Sure.
Jackson Arnold, I am the biggest Jackson Arnold truther that you will find in college football circles, Auburn fans included. You can go back and find some of our stuff from last year.
Yeah.
He's got some limitations.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You can throw the records out in a rivalry game. Miami Hurricanes have been the far better informed team so far, but the Florida Gators are going to come in desperate, looking to turn their season around.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes.
There's been a lot going on in Gainesville, from key injuries to suspensions of one of the assistant coaches. I mean, where do we start?
Start with the fact that I am so upset that this isn't an undefeated versus undefeated game, because I was really looking forward to it all summer. I was like, if Florida can even be 2-1 going into this game, I'm going to talk so much trash to Donna's listeners. But I can't. And now I know I'm going to have to deal with the comments of like, oh, you don't look as confident this time around, do you? I'm going to have to deal with that little shtick that they're going to bring out there. But I think the biggest storyline is just Billy Napier is, in theory, coaching for his job. I don't even know if he really is at this point. Honestly, if it were up to me, I'd say, hey, I don't care what happens for the rest of the season. You're not the guy. I said this last year after the A&M game. I was like, hey, he's not going to be the coach to win you a championship. Get rid of him. That ended up not being what they did because, they won a few games at the end, and then that means you're right back on track. How'd that go for you? But I think that, I don't know if he's really coaching for his job at this point. I don't think he's going to get fired after this game, regardless of what happens, unless it's an absolute blowout again. I don't think this is going to be the game that gets him fired. And a lot goes into that. Partially, Jabbar Jalouk, who is suspended for 3 games due to the LSU pregame altercation, was, I think, thought of as the interim in waiting. And so at least that's how I've thought of him, was that he would be the interim in waiting. And so he's suspended for 3 games. So did that buy Billy 3 games? And also, of course, you fire a head coach and your team is allowed to enter the transfer portal immediately for 30 days. Personally, and I know this is like a scummy side of business here, but this is a business. I'd say I'm going to wait at least 5 games, make sure some guys don't have the opportunity to redshirt and then enter the transfer portal. And then they have more incentive to actually play out the season before just entering the portal at the end of the season, or at least playing a few more games and then entering the portal. So I think the biggest thing for Florida is just like, is this team going to show up for Billy once again? Because last year we all thought Billy was gone, and then they showed up like crazy and rallied behind him. So I think for Florida, that's got to be the biggest storyline of, will they do it again, and do they still believe in Billy? Which I do think a large portion of that locker room still does.
Yeah, I think for Miami, the first obvious thing is keep consistency. Don't take your foot off the gas, because a lot has been working for the Hurricanes so far. The mistakes have been down overall this season. The trenches have been dominant, which is really what Mario Cristobal envisioned when he took this job. The offensive line has been really good for the past couple of years, but the defensive line, I think, has taken a big step forward. I'm going to be very interested to see how, and we'll talk about this more with our matchups coming up a little bit later, how Miami's defensive line, with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor looking unblockable at times, how they're going to match up against Florida's offensive line, which is very good. So we're going to get a look at that on Saturday. That's going to be one of the key matchups. But also the way Carson Beck and his receivers have performed so far has been a really pleasant surprise. I think Miami definitely benefits from, a lot of the negativity and the narrative surrounding Carson when he decided to leave Georgia, because I really believe that lit a fire under him, because a lot of the stuff that people in Athens were claiming about him, that, hey, maybe he's not the hardest worker, he's not the best teammate. His experience so far in Miami going back to January is the exact opposite. The guy has been a film junkie. He's been a leader. From the moment he arrived on campus, he dove headfirst into Shannon Dawson's offense, and even not being healthy enough to throw the football in spring, was still able to hit the ground running when fall practices began. And we've seen, the targets that he's developed the most chemistry with so far. CJ Daniels, formerly of LSU, who comes up with a circus catch or two in every single game. Malachi Toney, true freshman, who's been really good. And you started to see last week a couple of other targets emerge. True freshman receiver Josh Moore had his breakout game with 2 touchdown receptions. And Keelan Marion, transfer receiver from BYU, led the team in receiving against South Florida last week with 6 catches for 81. So, so far it's one of those things where everything's been working for Miami. So you're going to start to see their consistency tested, because we all remember what happened last year. Miami had some dicey moments, but they did start the season 9-0 before fading down the stretch. So you have to show the intensity over the course of 12 plus games. That's one thing. And another thing I'm going to be looking at, Brandon, if the scenario comes up in this game, we'll see. But the Hurricanes so far this year have not trailed at any point in their games. They were at one point tied against Notre Dame 24-24 in the fourth quarter, but never trailed. Obviously didn't trail against Bethune-Cookman, didn't trail against South Florida. So we haven't seen how the game plan and how the attitude changes if you're playing from behind. The pass rush, which has had a lot of success for Miami, has been able to, really pin their ears back playing with leads. Miami's had the opportunity to, lean on their running game a lot to milk the clock. So if that scenario comes up this week, we'll find out. But I want to get your take here when we're sticking with storylines, interesting quarterback storylines on both sides, because, Carson Beck, he's completing almost 80% of his passes so far. He's got 7 touchdowns. He even scored a rushing touchdown against South Florida this past weekend. Carson is actually, it's very early, I don't put a lot of stock into this stuff now, but he's now top in the Heisman Trophy odds according to FanDuel. So he's had a really good start. And then with DJ Lagway, Sure, there are a number of different reasons for it, Brandon, but we've not seen, the form that he was in the second half of last year. And Lagway comes off a 5 interception performance against LSU.
Yeah, I mean, DJ looked like he was reading in Chinese when he was looking at that iPad on the sideline. It was brutal. I hate doing things like this, but like I really don't remember the last time that I saw a quarterback just look as flustered as he did. And like it didn't even look like he was like, oh yeah, like I have no idea what's actually happening. It kind of just looked like he looked as if he was like, no matter what I do, like things are going poorly here. And it was brutal to watch. Like you could just see the frustration on his face after the 3rd pick, and then after the 4th pick, and then after the 5th pick. Like you just saw the frustration every time. And I'll be really interested to see if he bounces back, because I also do feel like maybe there's that little weight off his shoulders of like, well, I'm never going to play a worse game than that. So at least there's not, he can only go up from here, I guess. So I'd be really interested to see how DJ bounces back. I'm interested to see how Miami defends Florida. I said this last week when doing the crossover with Matt Moscona of Locked On LSU, where and that was very Blake Baker style of, we're going to play press man, we're going to be really aggressive, we're going to throw a whole bunch of different looks at you pressure wise. I said that if I'm any defensive coordinator, I'm doing that same thing against DJ Lagway. I'm being as disrespectful as humanly possible. I'm playing press man coverage. I'm sending everything I possibly can at you, and I'm going to do it until you make me respect you. Because at this point, like Florida Gators fans have had the argument of, well, it's because of Florida's offense going so condensed that teams can just blitz the hell out of Lagway and really tee off on him. Last week, we saw them go more spread out than they've ever gone under Billy Napier, and LSU still did the same thing. And my argument for it's because the formation is condensed is that even if you spread things out, that doesn't solve the problem of your passing game, because you still need to complete the passes, and DJ Lagway hasn't done that. So I'm really interested to see that battle. Honestly, the defensive coordinator battle to me is just incredible in this game, because that's how I would defend DJ Lagway. But then also, I mentioned the other day that I think that Garrett Nussmeier is a smarter quarterback than Carson Beck, because I think that football IQ wise, I think Garrett Nussmeier is arguably the smartest quarterback in the nation. Son of an offensive coordinator. You watch the way that he manages the line at the line of scrimmage, and you watch how he just manages an offense. It's incredible. I don't think he's physically a great quarterback at all, but I think that IQ wise, he's maybe the smartest quarterback in the nation. And it wasn't a knock on Carson Beck, but I am very interested to see 2 things for Carson Beck mentally. One, how he's going to deal with Florida's pressure looks and just the way they disguise pressure and disguise coverage on the back end. I think that's been giving quarterbacks a lot of fits for really the better part of a year. Once they figured things out last year, that's how they defended everybody. That's how they made their plays. That's how they caused hell for quarterbacks. And then also just from a confidence standpoint from Carson Beck, like he's been playing very well, but last year he played one of his worst games as a college quarterback against Florida with the 3 interceptions. 2 of them were just awful decisions that you can't really excuse. So I'm just interested to see how he bounces back. I'm not saying that's going to be a struggle for him. It's just a thing I'm interested to see. How do you kind of shake that off? Because he's also obviously in a completely different setting than he was in last year.
The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet in the moment. Player props, same-game parlays, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Chris, both of these teams are looking to start and strong in Big 12 play, and it's going to be a massive key for Texas Tech to be able to deal with the elements that are going to come when going against a hostile environment in Rice-Eccles Stadium. This, to me, is where it gets interesting. We talked a little bit on the last episode about this group having not played a true road game. To now be playing a true road game at altitude where it's going to be noisy and loud, especially on your offensive line, for me, if I'm a Texas Tech fan, that is a concern. How do you feel like that group is ready? And it's not NFL caliber yet for John Henry Daly, but he is a guy. He has 5 sacks. He's been really productive off the edge. And this Utah team does have some strong defensive line talent. How are you feeling about the matchup in the trenches for Tech?
And he transferred from BYU?
Yes, he did. And our other guy did too, Logan Fotto.
This is wild to me. Like, everybody hates each other with this deal. And like, arguably the greatest coach in Utah history, Kyle Whittingham, yes?
Yep.
BYU grad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the whole thing is so fascinating to me, because this is all new for those of us in Texas. We're used to, I could tell you a lot about TCU and Baylor and some of these private school snotty people and all that stuff. But the whole BYU and Utah thing is fascinating to me. I think that at face value, we can get into matchups and everything like that. But at face value, I think it will be difficult to run the ball if you're Texas Tech against this Utah defense.
Mm-hmm.
But because I think typically Morgan Scalley plays a lot of man coverage. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he does.
Yeah, right. And that's where I would say I really would like the matchups that Texas Tech has on the outside. And Caleb Douglas and Reggie Virgil. Reggie Virgil is one of the top receiver portal. I mean, Oklahoma and Florida State were very frustrated that they didn't add him in the portal back in December. Caleb Douglas, I think, was the second leading receiver in the conference of returning players last year behind Jordan Tyson, and we all know who that is. Coy Aiken had a 100-yard game last week, but then they also added Terrence Carter, who was one of the top tight end portal candidates, and he's been just this freakish, weird mismatch. He's like 6'2", shorter than most tight ends, but he's 250 and very fast, very athletic. And so I'm fascinated. Can Utah cover everybody? Nobody else has been able to, but that's because not everybody's been very good that you've played. And most of these guys haven't even played into the second half or but a couple of series in the third quarter. So that's where it comes down to me is I don't know if you'll be able to run it with much success. I do think that you'll be able to hold up and let your quarterback play some pitch and catch, but this is where Baron Morton has to be good.
Mm-hmm.
You asked this, aloud, and one of the earlier things we were talking about is he good enough to go lead you to a conference championship? And this is a game where he needs to be really good, or he needs to be a plus. And now's the time. And if not now, then when? And it's not like this game is the end all be all, but he's going to have to play well. And that may be by design. That may be like, we like these matchups. And so we're going to put it in our quarterback's hands and we're going to trust that he can deliver it. And we can win one-on-one matchups on the outside or down the seam or whatever it is, because we just don't know if we want to beat our head against the wall trying to run the football. I don't know. So that's where I'm curious. And I don't, he's this is one of the best defenses in the last 4 or 5 years, especially so at home. I think I'll throw this number out at you that I think that in the last 4 years, I think Coach Scalley's defenses are averaging giving up 15 points a game, which is top 5 in the country, again, with games in Salt Lake. So that's why, like, our point's going to be at a premium. I mean, I just don't know really what to expect here. And I don't know if this version of the Ute defense, is it as good as it was last year, which was really good? Is it as good last year? And where are the holes? Or I don't know. I guess you tell me.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn, because on coming into this year, they lost so many veterans. They had key starters, like 4 of them that were part of like both Pac-12 title teams, even like that one, the ones in 21, 22, right? All the COVID year stuff. Those guys got to stay around a little longer. So there was a lot of turnover on this roster. So I've said, hey, you lose veterans, you're going to take a step back. Well, so far, so good. Haven't played anyone, but when you haven't played anyone, you want to blow them out. I mean, you give up only 10 points at UCLA. You held Cal Poly to 9, Wyoming to 6, right? Like this Utah team, the 6 was a garbage time touchdown. plate. This Utah defense has looked the part so far. But as we've also said frequently, you haven't really played anyone. This is such a massive leap up of an offense that it's going to be really fascinating to see. I've really liked what John Henry Daly has shown. He really didn't do much at all last year, but now he's had an offseason to grow and develop, and he looks like a really strong pass rusher off the edge. I think he's a guy who NFL scouts are not there to see John Henry Daly, but he could surprise them. Not a first-round pick, but a mid-round pick guy that he's been really productive. Utah's defensive tackles, they lost their top 3 D tackles from a year ago, and they've already had an injury at that position as well, too. So how is that defensive tackle room going to hold up on the interior? Who else can get pressure? Really like the linebackers that Utah's. Lander Barton, Jonathan Hall, Leavani Demooney, all some veterans that have been able to produce a lot for this Utah team. Secondary, retooled pretty well. Did have a season-ending injury at a safety spot, but that safety, Rabbit Evans, had missed a couple other games as well, too. So secondary has looked really good and strong. We talked about Smith Snowden on offense yesterday. I think he's one of the best corners in the Big 12 Conference, too, and Elijah Davis does a good job on the outside as well. So I do think this Utah defense is good, Chris, but it is so fascinating. Yesterday, we talked about how Utah's offense wants to be in third down and short situations. I think Texas Tech's going to be comfortable and not comfortable, but they're okay if they're third and long because they're going to trust and like the talent they have on the outside. And I can't wait to see who's going to win those matchups, because even if Utah plays good coverage, I saw Morton had one throw down the sideline for a touchdown last week. It was great coverage by the Beavers, but there's nothing you can do when that throw is on the money.
Yeah, and that's, and I think that Joey McGuire has shown he's not as crazy as like Dave Aranda is with this, because like what Baylor's doing on fourth down attempts is just I don't know if it's insanity or he's just way ahead of the curve. But I think that, sometimes and Texas Tech will come into this game as an underdog, and that factors into their analytics and the way that they approach the game. They may be more aggressive on fourth downs as well, because if they like those, it's just you got to win one-on-one matchups. And if you trust your quarterback and he's got to put the ball up there for, because these receivers, like Reggie Virgil and Caleb Douglas, they're 6'3", 6'4", Coy Aikens 6'3", and obviously John Carlos Miller is about 6'5", and Terrence Carter, the tight end, and we mentioned he's not as tall as your typical tight end, but he's fascinating to me because if you put a linebacker on him, which is typically what some teams do, he's just so much faster. And so I don't know. I am curious internally in that I wonder what they have held on to and what they haven't shown, because most of these guys haven't played, like I said, into the second half in any of these 3 games. Your offensive line hasn't played into the second half in a lot of these games. And there's some, as you and I touched on, there's been some tinkering going on there with the offensive line. It's set, but not quite set. And can they hold up? Can they move people? I've often asked this aloud. Can Texas Tech run the ball when they want to? And when the opposition knows we know what's coming, we're going to try to stop it. Last year, the answer was yes. This year, I just don't know. And that's one of you mentioned injuries. That one of the key additions to this portal class was a USC running back, Quentin Joyner, who I think was going to be the kind of the do-it-all guy, 5'10", about 215. I saw him enough in August. It's like, oh, yeah, this is going to be really good. And in the second scrimmage, he ended up hurting his ACL. So your running back room, it looks a little bit different now. And it's I don't want to say like a weakness, but is it a question mark? Yeah. I mean, I think especially in games like this, you've got talent there, but it's just, depth and proven experience, no. So talent, yes, but proven experience, no. So anyway, this is interesting. I think for Texas Tech to win this game, Baron Morton will have to have a good to really big day. I just don't know if I know how to define that just yet on what it will take. What do you got to score? 24? Is that enough? You got to score 27. You got to score 31. You got to score 28. You got to score 40. I mean, I don't know what what it's going to take here, but I think a lot will be on the quarterback for Texas Tech that day.